Hi everyone, I'm Dilip and it's really nice to have you here. In this video, we are getting started with Azure OpenAI chat completion, one of the most exciting features of Azure OpenAI. If you have already watched the previous video, you will remember we explored Azure OpenAI and how it brings powerful OpenAI services into the Azure ecosystem. But if you haven't seen it yet, no worries, you can find the link in the description below and I invite you to check it out. So with this video, let's go beyond and focus a bit more on the chat completion capabilities and create our own AI-powered conversational systems. Alright, first of all, what is this Azure OpenAI chat completion? Azure OpenAI chat completion is a service that allows us to integrate advanced conversational AI into our applications. This feature leverages OpenAI's state-of-the-art language models, enabling machines to have interactive, human-like conversations with users. We can send a prompt, a question, or even just a statement, and the model will respond intelligently based on the input. This makes it perfect for things like virtual assistants, customer support chatbots, or even interactive content on websites. What's powerful about this is the model's ability to understand context, handle complex queries, and generate coherent, natural-sounding responses. So, why is this important? Well, in today's digital world, AI-powered conversational systems are becoming essential for businesses looking to enhance customer experience, automate support, and even generate content. Whether it's answering questions, completing tasks, or carrying on a conversation, these models can help us create chat-based solutions that feel natural and intuitive. At its core, chat completion uses a conversational based approach. This means it doesn't just generate a single answer to a question, it understands the flow of the conversation and adapts its responses accordingly. To work with chat completion, we have a variety of models to choose from, each offering different capabilities. For example, we can use models like GPT-4, GPT 3.5, and others, depending on the complexity and type of tasks we need to perform. Each model comes with its strengths. Let me quickly show you the documentation. So, as you can see, this is the official documentation and there are so many models available and we can select models that we want to work with. So with this video, let's try to work with a model, then we can get an idea about how these things work. Now, I'm not planning to dive into all the theories and behind the scenes details of how this feature works. That's not the focus of this video. Instead, we are going to roll up our sleeves, get hands-on and dive straight into the coding to build something practical together. Of course, if you are interested in deeper dive, I will cover the technical details in a separate video because honestly, if we went too deep here, this video would end up being way too long and I don't want to bore you. Let's keep this fun and actionable. Alright, it's time for the demo. Okay, now I'm inside the Azure portal. So, first thing that I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a resource group so we can put all the relevant resources under a one roof. To create a resource group, what we can do is, we can search it using either search bar or using the hamburger menu, right? So let's try to search it from this search bar. All we have to do is just enter resource groups so you can find this feature. And the next thing is you can do this using the hamburger menu in the top left corner. Alright, so if you have already used this feature just like you see in this screen, you can find it from your home page as well. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this card and go to this resource groups page. Alright, now I'm in the resource groups page. As you can see, I haven't created any resource group yet. That's why no resource groups to display messages appeared on, right? To create a resource group, what we can do is, we can just click this blue button or we can click the create button in the top left corner. After we create one resource group, we can see a list inside this page. Let's try to click this create button and continue. Okay, now we can see a page titled with create a resource group and it enables the basics tab, right? What we have to do is in this page, we can select our subscription, resource group name and the region. Okay, currently I have only this Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, but if you have one or many, you can select your own subscription according to your needs. Maybe you have a dev subscription, maybe a test, maybe a production, whatever, right? And for the resource group name, I'm going to select movie company because in this video, we are going to create a small console application for movie recommendation. So you can add more features later, then extend this into a movie recommendation system or whatever you prefer. Yeah, I get it. This is a very general and common approach, but I think this is very good for beginners like me. Now we have to select the region. When we selecting a region, we have to concern about few things. I'm not going to talk about them in this video, but in a future video, I will show you what are the things that we need to be aware about before we creating or before we selecting a region. So as you can see, there are so many regions available and we can select our preferred region from this drop-down menu. And for this project, I'm going to select East US 2. Now we have selected our subscription, resource group name and the region. Okay, let's go the next tab. That's about the tag. Okay, so in these tags, we can select a name and value, right? These tags help us to manage our budget, cost management, and other things. So let's talk about these tags when we are working with cost management and other things in future videos. For this video, I'm not going to talk about these tags and I'm not going to select any tag. Let's jump into the next. This is the review and create tab. In here, we can review all the things that we have selected within the previous tabs and we can verify all the things before we create this resource group. If everything is okay, what we have to do is we can just click this blue button and create our resource group. I'm going to click this button, create the resource group. In few minutes, you can see the notification about resource group created. So our resource group has now successfully created and now we can work with it. Cool. I think this is okay about the resource groups for this video. If you want to know about more resource groups and other things related to Azure and Azure Portal, you can ask me anything and I'll try to make videos about that as well. Okay. Since we have created this resource group, now let's create the Azure OpenAI resource. That means Azure OpenAI service. To create our resource group, I'm going to first go to this resource group. Inside this resource group, we will create our resource. Okay, to access this resource group, we can either select it from the list or we can click the button from the notification bar. I'm gonna click it from the list. After we click the resource group, we can see there are so many things available under the resource group, right? By default, it opens up the overview tab, but there are many more things available as well, right? Activity log, access control, tags, resource visualizer, events, settings, cost management, monitoring, automation, help, and so on, right? But for this video, I'm not going to talk about all of them because just like I mentioned earlier, it is going to be very long otherwise, right? Now let's quickly jump to the resource creation part. To do that, if your resource group is empty, I mean there is no any other resources created, we can see the blue button like this, and by clicking this button we can create a resource inside this resource group. Also, if you have created one or more resources, you can see the available resources in here. And to create a resource, in generally, we can click the button in the top left corner. So let's click this create button and start creating the Azure OpenAI resource. After we click the create button, it directs us to the marketplace, right? In this marketplace, we can find so many services and there are a lot of things going on. So our mission is to find the Azure OpenAI resource. To do that, let's search it using the search box. I entered these two keywords, Azure OpenAI. It shows us so many things and we need to find the Azure service only. To do that, we can select this tick and it will show us about the Azure services only. Here is a small tip. You can add this into your favorites so you can quickly access it in later. Okay, this is the Azure OpenAI and I'm going to click this card. Now we can see all the relevant details for this Azure OpenAI resource, or let's say Azure OpenAI service. As you can see, there is overview tab, plans, usage information plus support, and ratings plus reviews. So I'm not going to talk about these things. It's up to you. Okay, let's not waste our time and just click this create button and open up the next page. Okay, now we are inside the create Azure OpenAI page and by default the basics tab is opened right now, and now we have to select our subscription, resource group and region, name and the pricing tier. For the subscription, just like previous step, I'm going to select my Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, but you can select whatever you want. Alright, and for the resource group, we can select our newly created resource group, or we can select if we want to work with other resource group. Alright, and also here is another important thing. If we want to create a new resource group, we can do it inside this step as well. By clicking this create new button, we can quickly create a resource group. For this project, I'm not going to create a new resource group. I'm going to select what we have created earlier. Next thing is the selection of the region. Alright, just like I mentioned you earlier, we have to think about so many things when we are concerning about these regions. But for this video, I'm going to select East US 2 because something like favorite of mine, but you can select whatever you prefer. Okay, alright. For the name, I told you we are going to create a small console application, movie recommendation. So I'm going to use the name of this resource as movie recommendation chat app. But if you want to prefer some official abbreviations, maybe you can try out them as well. But for this video, I'm not going to concern about that. We will talk about those things in future videos. Alright, next thing is we have to select the pricing tier. I can only select standard S0, but if you have anything else, you can select it also. Alright, get to know about more details about these pricings, you can go to the pricing page and check it out. But I'm not going to show you in this video. It's up to you. Alright, I'm going to click this next button and it open up this network tab. Right, in this network tab, we can give our resource access to maybe all networks or any selected networks, or we can disable any network. For this project, I don't want to restrict the network. I'm just give all the network access, including the internet, can access this resource. Alright. Next is about the tags. Okay, for this resource, I'm not going to include any tags. Let's jump into the next. That is the review and submit. In here, we can review all the things that we have selected earlier. And if we are okay with it, let's create it by clicking this blue button. Now, a notification just pop up and telling me that initializing the deployment. Let's give some time. Now we can see submitting deployment. Just in a few seconds, you can see this page as well. And here we can see all the deployment status and the deployment progress. Let's give some time. Alright, cool. Now the page shows about your deployment is complete. I think we have successfully created our resource. We can access to this resource by clicking this blue button or using the notification button. I'm going to click this go to resource button. Again, now we are inside the resource group. Previously, we didn't see any resource under this list, but now after we created that, we can find our newly created resource in this list. Okay, let me open up our Azure OpenAI resource, which is the movie recommendation chat app. Now we are inside the resource. Well, there are so many things going on here as well, just like in the Azure resource group. I'm not going to talk about all of these things in this video. Let's quickly open the Azure AI Foundry portal and start working with the Azure OpenAI service so we can build our generative AI console application. To open up the Azure AI Foundry portal, we can just click this button, go to Azure AI Foundry portal, or we can access this resource using directly inside the Azure AI Foundry portal as well. So let's quickly click this button. After entering the Azure AI Foundry portal, we can see by default Chat Playground tab is opened, but let's go to all of the tabs and get an idea about what is this and what are those things. Alright, now I am inside the Home tab and I want to specially mention that we are inside the Azure portal, but we are actually inside the dedicated section for the Azure AI service, right? Actually, Azure AI Foundry is a large portion, but currently now we are inside the section where include all the necessary features for the Azure AI services. Alright, let's talk about Azure AI Foundry and all of those things in another video. Now we are inside the Home tab. As you can see, inside this Home tab, we can find our resource group name, our subscription ID, pricing tier, location, and Azure OpenAI service endpoint, as well as the resource group name with API keys, actually 2 API keys. And also, to play with these features, we have another section for get started. We can click this try it now button and play with it. Okay, I'm not going to talk about these playgrounds, but in this video, let's work with Chat Playground. Now, let me quickly show you the model catalog tab. So in here, we can find all the available models, actually OpenAI models that we can work with. Currently, we have 25 available models for chat completion, audio generation, embeddings, text to speech, speech recognition, text to image, and completion. Guess what? We will work with these models in future videos. Now you can see the chat playground. So we will work with this chat playground next. Just skip for now. This is the Assistance Playground. In here, we can start working with Assistance API and work with the Assistance feature and other things as well. So let's talk about this Assistance in later videos. Now we are inside the Real-Time Audio Playground where we can work with real-time audio. It is something like we can ask a question from the AI and AI will respond for us. The next step we are seeing is Image Playground. In here, we can generate images using image generation models. Yeah, currently this service is not supported for this region. Let's talk about these things later. So this is the completions playground and actually it is text completion, not our chat completion that we are going to work in this video. Okay, now we can see the tools. First one is fine tuning. We can fine tune models by using this tab, and the next one is Azure OpenAI service evaluation. We can evaluate the performance of our Azure OpenAI service models across various tasks and dimensions. And here we can use this to store completions to evaluate or fine-tune models. And remember, this is also a very good feature, but for this video, we are not going to deal with it. In here, we can find the batch jobs. That means we can create and manage jobs for our global batch deployments. Yep, we will talk about those stuff as well later. Alright, now we are in the most important tab. Okay, that's the deployment. This is the place where we deploy our models. We can quickly select a model and deploy here, and we can manage our deployed models also here. Let's jump into this part soon. Alright, now you're seeing this quota tab. In here we can monitor and track our quota usages. That means we can view our quotas by subscription and region and track usage across our deployments. This is also a very important place when we are working with a long-term project. Okay, now we are inside the safety and security tab where we can manage inappropriate content. We can use this to filter out content work alongside core models. Let's talk about these things later. Okay, the next tab is the data files where we can connect, create or manage our data. Okay, this is a very important place when we're dealing with assistance and vector stores and so on, right? Okay, this tab is about the vector stores where we can include all the relevant vector store data files for the assistant. In simple terms, this vector store objects gives the file search tool the ability to search our files, and we can just quickly upload any files so assistants can quickly access it and provide us the relevant answers. Yep, very much important point here as well. Okay, these are the things that we can find inside the Azure AI Foundry portal, Azure OpenAI service section. Okay, now let's start with the chat playground to get some idea how this chat completion works. Alright, now I have selected the chat playground. To work with chat playground, we need to deploy a model. Otherwise, we can't use it. And it shows like this, right? No deployment exists. The chat playground also disabled. To create a new deployment, we can either click this button and select a model, or we can select the deployments tab and continue our model deployment. I'm going to click this deployments tab. Here we have a blue button, and after we click that, we can find three options. First one is deploy base model. Second one is deploy fine-tuned model. Third one is deploy model from Azure ML, right? In this video, we don't need to deal with this deploy fine-tuned model and deploy model from Azure machine learning. Let's quickly click this deploy base model. After that, we can find the available models. There are 25 models available, and I'm going to select our model from the chat completion category. To do that, I'm going to click this filter button and select the chat completion, and going to select the model as GPT-4 or mini. We can find a description about this model. To continue, let's click this confirm button. In this step, we have to select few more things as well. First one is the deployment name. I'm going to keep this as it is, but if you prefer something else, you can try to rename this. For the deployment type, there are a few choices, but I'm going to select the global standard, and if you want to know about what are those things, I will put the links in the description as well. Alright, now we have to select a few more things. This is actually optional, but I'm going to show you what are those. First, we need to select the model version. So currently I can only see this version, and that's the default one. I'm going to keep it as it is. So next one is tokens per minute rate limit, and that means the corresponding requests per minute, as well as we can say RPM. So this is just about tokens, how we use per minute. We will talk about those stuff in another video if you want. To select RPM, we can quickly move this slider and select the limit that we want. And the next one is about the content filter. As you can see, we can filter the contents, and I'm going to select this default V2. If you want to know about these things, you can just simply hover this and find the details. Now everything is good to go. What I'm going to do is just quickly click this deploy button. Now our model has now successfully deployed, and we can see the details about the model deployment. Also, there are two other tabs as well about metrics and risks and safety. So in this metrics, we can find all the analytics for this model, how many total requests, total token count, prompt token count, completion token count, and how about the token usage, and also RPM value. That means the requests per minute, right? We will check this graph and the analytics after we work with the chat completion. So this is the risks and safety. I'm not going to talk about that right now. To work with this model, we can open this in playground, and also we can edit this model deployment, and also we can delete this model deployment as well. Let's try to work with this model inside the playground. To do that, we can just simply click this blue button, that means open in the playground, or we can go to the chat playground tab. Now we can see the deployed model inside this drop down menu. Alright, let's start with the sample prompt, get an idea about how this works. In here, I'm going to keep the model instructions and context as it is, which is the UI and AI assistant that helps people and find information. And I'm going to select the sample prompt as marketing slogan to create a catchy marketing slogan for a new eco-friendly product. Let's see what is the output. Go green, live clean, embrace nature with every step. Good. Okay, let's clear this chat and try another prompt. I'm going to select this character development, describe a day in the life of a superhero who has lost their powers. Let's see how this output looks like. Alright, we have so many details and I'm not going to read everything for you. So let me quickly show you what is this gear icon. So that is the chat capabilities. As you can see, we can use this to speech to text or text to speech. This is an important feature. So it's a good thing if we can talk about these things in another video. So I'm going to clear this chat as well. And now let's try to work with the prompt aligns with our goal. That is the movie recommendation. To create the prompt, I'm going to generate it using these small words. I'm going to enter your movie recommendation assistant and send it to the OpenAI. After a few seconds, it generated this prompt. So there is a long prompt. We can customize this if you want as well. How about we try this inside the chat? I'm gonna ask, hi, give me a movie. Okay, it says like, could you share a bit more about your preferences? How about AI? Great. Here are some movie recommendations. Okay, now that we know this is working, right, as we expected. So this is how the chat completion works. It knows about the context and how to deal with it. It's not only generate content, it can work with us with our needs. Well, there is another fact that I want to tell you. We can actually add more features to this playground. That means adding a section like safety system messages, examples, variables. Also, we can add data sources, and that's a brilliant idea and great feature. We can work with our data. If we want to work with a rack pattern architecture or maybe another thing, we can go for it using this source adding part, right? Yeah, and also we can customize the parameters as well, like how about the past messages included, max responses, temperature, top P, stop sequence, frequent penalty, and so on, right? Well, there are so many things going on here and I'm not going to discuss everything. Okay, let's create a separate video for these things, and this is only the introduction and getting started with chat completion, so we don't have to deal with everything right now. Alright, before we jump into the next part, I want to tell you another thing. That's this blue button. Okay, yeah, I'm guarantee I'm only going to talk about this blue button, not only that. Deploy, import, export, prompt, samples, filters, feedback. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this blue button. Okay, by clicking this blue button, we can find the sample code. Okay, this is just a sample code, how we can integrate to our own project. Okay, so this includes some of the key points that we need to understand. You can find all the relevant details, including the sample code, endpoint. In above, we can find the intra-ID authentication as well as the key authentication. So in here, we can work either with intra-ID authentication or the key authentication, but for the most places we are working is key authentication, but officially they are not recommending key authentication. They are recommending to use the intra-ID authentication, but key authentication is also fine for us for now. And another thing, currently this code is about Python, but if you want to work with JSON, Python C# or curl, all the codes are available here that we want to get started. So these are just basics that I wanted to show you in here. I think it's enough for this part, and let's jump into the next section. In this section, let's start coding. Okay, so there are few ways we can get started with chat completion. Let me quickly show you a documentation. This documentation about quick start, I'll include this link in the description so you can refer it later. In here, we can choose our preferred usage method, whether it's Portal, C#, Go, Java, JavaScript, Python, PowerShell, REST, Spring, or TypeScript. We can select whatever we want and start working out. But this video, I'm going to use Python because It's simple, widely used, and makes integrating with Azure OpenAI super straightforward. Plus, the Python SDK is really beginner friendly, so it's perfect for hands-on demos like this. Before we dive into the coding, let's take a quick look at a diagram. So this diagram is basically about how our console applications is going to create and how this system works. Alright, this is the diagram, and before that I want to tell you I'm not an expert in designing diagrams. I tried my best, so I hope you can understand this very small diagram. Okay, in this system we have two main entities. First one is our project inside the computer, and the second one is the Azure OpenAI by Microsoft. With the starting, we worked with Azure OpenAI. So let me give you a quick recap, little bit of zoom here. Alright, first we have created our resource group, then created the Azure OpenAI resource. After that, we deployed a model, then we received the API endpoint and a key. Now we are going to use this. Okay, let's visit to the second entity. That's our project. Inside our computer, we need to create a project first. Let's assume it is an empty folder, and we need to open up it using any favorite coding editor, maybe IDE. So I already installed Python inside my local computer, and I hope you the same, right? So inside our computer, we already have Python. Now what we are going to do is we will create a virtual environment inside our project. So if you don't know about what is this virtual environment, let me give you a small clue. Alright, virtual environment, we are going to use the short form as VENV. So this is a tool in Python that allows us to create isolated environments for our projects. Each environment has its own dependencies and Python packages separate from the system-wide Python installation or other projects. When we create a Python virtual environment, it copies the Python interpreter and some basic files from our system's Python installation, but it doesn't copy the global Python packages. The virtual environment is separate from the global Python environment, so packages installed globally won't be available inside the virtual environment unless we explicitly install them here. Alright, this is about the virtual environment, and after we create this virtual environment, we will be able to access the pip commands and also using some Python based commands as well. If you don't know about pip, let me give a quick description for that as well. So pip stands for pip installs packages, and it is the package installer for Python. It's the tool to use to install and manage Python packages like OpenAI and python.env from the Python package index, that means py or other sources. Okay, I'm not going to talk all the things related to these, so it's enough for now. After we initialize the virtual environment, we may need to work with two main packages. One thing is the python.env package and the second one is OpenAI package. Alright, both OpenAI and python.env are Python packages. So this OpenAI package is used to interact with OpenAI's GPT models and other APIs offered by OpenAI. It allows us to integrate GPT-based functionalities into our Python applications. Python.env. This package is used to local environment variables from a .env file into the environment. That means making it easier to manage sensitive data like API keys, database credentials, and etc. So after we install these packages, we may need to create .env file for the environment variables. So what is this .env file? A env file is a simple text file that contains environment variables, which are key value pairs, usually used to configuration purposes in soft applications. These variables are typically used to store sensitive information like API keys, database credentials, or other configuration details that we don't want hard-coded into our code. As for the best practices, we don't commit .env files to version control. It's a good practice to add .env file to our git ignore file to prevent it from being pushed to GitHub or any other repositories. And I think it's enough for this video. After we create this .env file, we have to store two variables. First one is the Azure OpenAI endpoint and the second one is Azure OpenAI API key. So these two things are from the Azure OpenAI previously talked about. I think you got some idea, right? And we will include these things with hands-on so you will understand much more better. Alright, let me quickly tell you another thing. This is all about how we use the Python.env package. So with the OpenAI package, we may need to do another thing associated with the app.py Python file. Alright, we are going to use Azure OpenAI client. Let me quickly tell you about this app.py file. So inside our project, we are going to create this app.py file and this will be the entry point of our project. That means our small command line application. We are going to include all the logics and other code bases inside this file. In this video, we are going to create a movie recommendation application and this application may need to work with GPT models to do the AI thing, right? So to work with that, we may need to import Azure OpenAI client from this OpenAI Python package. So inside this OpenAI client, we have to include Azure OpenAI endpoint, API key, API version, deployment, and all other things. So just to be clear, we will use the environment variables for the Azure OpenAI endpoint and API key fields. And another small thing that I want to mention, we are going to use Git for the version control, and it's a very best practice to have version control within a project. So I'm not going to talk about the Git and other things in this video, but we will use Git for the version control. After we write all the codes, now let's see how it works, right? There is no magic. It's a very simple thing, okay? We write a small piece of a code. Inside this code, we implement the Azure OpenAI client, right? Between Azure OpenAI and our project, it uses a REST-based API to interact. That means we are dealing with REST APIs and JSON. I hope you got an idea about how the system works, and I'm not going to explain all of these things. Let's stop this for now and finally jump into the coding. Now I have opened the terminal and my present working directory is desktop. So I'm planning to use this location to create the project, but you can select your preferred location. Currently, I don't have anything inside the desktop. It is completely empty. By this ls command, you can see it. Let me open the file explorer and show it to you. As you can see, the desktop is empty. I'm going to create a new folder and make the name as movie_recommender. So you can also create whatever you prefer. Also, if you're following something different approach, then you can use that as well. But in this video, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. So that's why I'm creating this empty folder and starting from the scratch like this. Okay, now after we enter this ls command, we can see we have currently created the movie_recommender folder. Now I'm going to change the directory. Now we are in the correct path. Let's open this with Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to open the terminal now. Alright, as you can see now, the inbuilt terminal has been opened and we can work by using that as well. Also, we can use our regular terminal as well. Let me show you what is the current Python version that I've installed inside my computer. Let me enter the Python code Python -- version, and currently you can see I have enabled the Python 3.1.3.2 version, but I have other versions as well. So we can easily view all the versions, including global and virtual environment versions, using Python environments extension, and I will show it to you soon. By default, our project is connected to the globally installed Python version. And as you can see, currently I have installed 4 different Python versions, so I can easily switch between them. And currently I haven't created any virtual environment yet. That's why we can see this no environment found message. Let's create this. We can easily create a virtual environment using this plus button. All we have to do is just select the Python version and the name. So this will be the easiest way to create a Python virtual environment for our project, but we will use the terminal instead of this approach, so we can try out how to work with this without the extension. I'm going to open the terminal and clear the history. Yep, let's enter this Python command, which is the Python space -m space venv for the virtual environment, and we will give the name of this virtual environment as .venv. Alright, now environment is created. Let's go to the Python tab and select this environment. Yep, you can see now project is updated with these new changes. Now I'm going to enable the virtual environment by using this command. Now we are good to go. We can install all the required packages under this new virtual environment. Before we create other files, let me quickly initialize the Git. Okay, by entering this Git command, I will enable the Git inside this project. Let me change the branch name from master to main. Alright, I think it's okay for now. How about we create a .ignore file and include all the things that we don't want to push into a public repository. By starting, I'm going to include this .venv folder inside this .gitignore file. Well, now let's create the app.py file. So this will be our entry point, but you can give it another name if you want. Alright, now let's write a small terminal print, which is the hello world, to check whether if it is working or not. I'm going to run this file using Python app.py command. So you can see the Visual Studio Code terminal output as the hello world. What about we try this using our regular terminal? Before that, I'm going to enable the virtual environment. Now let's try to run this file. Yep, same as usual. Now let's create the .env file and store the secrets. Give me a small time, I will show you how this works. If you are a beginner, I think this is going to be very helpful. So I'm going to use the variable name as example value, and the value will be example. Let's try to print this. Okay, before that, we have to make sure this file is not going to track by the Git. Let's try to add this file inside the .gitignore file. Before that, let's try to run this git status command and check whether if it is tracking or not. As you can see, the .env file is also started to track by the Git. So how about we ignore this by including the file name inside the .gitignore file. Then let's again run the git status command and check how about the status. Alright, now you can see it's no longer with the Git. But to work with these environment variables, we need to install the Python package, which is the python.env. So before that, let me show you what are the current packages installed within this virtual environment. Pip only. To install this Python package, we can try out in two ways. First one is the pip command using the terminal. We can try out pip install python-env, and the second one is we can try out the requirements.txt file. So if you don't know about what is this requirement.txt file, which is a file we can include every packages what we want to install inside a project. All we have to do is just include the list of the packages and just hit the command and install all together. I'm going to include the python.env and as well as the OpenAI. So we can install both using one single command. That's the pip install -r requirements.txt. But before that, I will show you how we can try out the single command I showed you earlier, that's the pip install python -env. Let's try to install that package using this command, and next we will work with the requirements.txt file. Let's give it some time. We can see the package has been successfully installed, and if we go back to the packages list and refresh it, we can see newly added Python package. Alright, this is the way how we can install packages one by one. But now let's try to use the all-in-one command. I'm going to clear this terminal and include the Python command, which is the pip install -r requirements.txt. Oops, I got an error. Could not open requirements file. Yep, I made a mistake. So we need to rename this file as requirements.txt. Let me clear the terminal and run the command again. Alright, let's give it some time. As you can see, now let's go above the terminal print and you can see something like this, which is the requirement already satisfied. And that's about the python-env package, which we already installed earlier. After that, you can see other required packages as well. So let me quickly refresh the packages list, and you can see all the necessary packages now successfully installed. Also, we can view this using a pip list command under the terminal way. So let's try to run this command, and you can see these are the installed packages and currently available to work with the project. Hey, I want to mention something to you. The reason why I included all these basic steps, because this is the first time we are interacting with these things. If you are a beginner, I think this will be a helpful guidance. But in the future videos, let's try to focus on only the things what matters. Alright, back to the code. Now let's see how we can access the environment variables. To do this, first we need to import OS, then from .env import load.env. Now let's call the function and put the value inside this example value from env variable. Then we will print this. Alright, now you got an idea how to access the environment variable. Now let's remove this example and add the real variables. First one is Azure OpenAI endpoint. Second one is the Azure OpenAI API key. I'm going to keep these GitHub Copilot suggestions so we can view the output, because I can't show you what is the exact Azure OpenAI endpoint and Azure OpenAI key. Why exactly? If you remember, these are the secrets. Let me quickly include the two variables, Azure endpoint from env and API key from env. We don't have to give these exact names for the variables, but for this video, I'm going to use these names. Let's quickly print these values and check whether if it is working or not. Oops, I made a mistake again. Let's update this to API key from env. Just like we guessed, it's working correctly. Let's replace these values with the original ones, and then we can connect easily with the Azure OpenAI resource that we have created. To do that, I'm going to open the movie recommendation chat app resource group inside the movie company resource group. To get the API key and the endpoint, we have three options. First one is by clicking this keys and endpoint under the resource management. I'm going to copy this endpoint and paste it inside our project environment variables. And we can select the API key as either key 1 or key 2, but I'm going to select key 1. Remember, we have to keep these secrets and not exposed to others. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this resource group very soon. By the time you seeing this video, it's already deleted. Okay, the second place where we can find the API key and the endpoint is where the Azure AI Foundry portal. By opening the Home tab, we can find Azure OpenAI Service endpoint and API keys. Third place is by using the Deployments tab and clicking the deployed model. Under the details, we can find this endpoint. Here we have the target URI and the key. In this target URI, we can find the endpoint and other necessary details, but we can filter out which is the endpoint. And here below, we can use this key. Okay, now I have updated the endpoint and the API key. Next, let's add a small code piece to check whether if this endpoint and key is missing or not, right? To do this, we can write this if not Azure endpoint from env or not API key from env. We can raise this value error. So it will be this Azure OpenAI credentials are missing. Before we try this out, let's delete the API key and the endpoint inside the .env file. And let's run the Python app.py command, and as you can see, the terminal output looks like this. I think it's working, but how about we restore those values and let's run this application again. Before that, I'm going to comment out this endpoint and API key printing, and let's add this else part for the testing purposes. We can print something like this: Azure OpenAI credentials are present. Yep, let's run this again. Okay, as you can see, it's working correctly. And if you want to remove this value and check it again, it also triggers the if part as well. Cool, now let's extend this code base. Since we don't want to print this endpoint and the API key, let's remove it. If you remember that diagram we saw previously, let's initialize the client and we will assign this client to Azure OpenAI. Let's import this from OpenAI. Pass 3 arguments. First one is Azure endpoint, and let's set the value as Azure endpoint from env. By pressing the keyboard shortcuts Ctrl plus space, we can get this list of arguments available. The second argument that I'm going to select is the API key, and also we will set this value from the environment variables. Alright, third one is API version. So this API version we can find from the official documentation in Microsoft Learn. But if you want to go with the shortcut, let's go to this deployments tab in Azure AI Foundry. Then we will select the model that we deployed. So here we can find the endpoint, and with this target URI, we can find the API version as well. Let me copy it and paste, then show it to you. So in this URI, we can find the API endpoint and as well as the deployment. Also, API version for the chat completion. In that case, we can use this 2024.8.1 preview API version. I'm going to copy and paste it here. Now let's deal with this response. We can write like response and we can assign it to this client's chat completion. So we can write like client.chat.completions.create. So if we hover this and check the description, we can find all the necessary relevant details related to this. Create function help us to work with the chat conversation. In here also we can pass few arguments, and the first argument that I'm going to pass is the model, and we can find the model that we have deployed. That's the GPT-4 Omni. And second one is the messages. So this will be an array, a list of messages. We can write these things like this. We can actually pass multiple objects, but in the beginning we need to set the role as system and the content as the system prompt. Let me format and align these things, and here I'm going to give the content as you are a helpful chatbot that recommends movies based on user preferences. Alright, by hovering the mouse to this role, we can find all available roles. That includes developer, system, user, assistant, tool, also function. Interesting. For the content, we can pass the system message or the user message. We have assistant message as well as tool. Work with the function as well. Let's keep these things, and also we will discuss about all of the required things in future videos, and I'm going to move on. Now for the second step, we need to add the user role. So this chat completion basically a chat between the GPT model and the user. So all the messages that we want to send to the GPT model as a user, we can include here. Now in the beginning, I'm going to start the chat like, hi, I'm looking for a movie to watch. So this will be our first message that we are going to send to the GPT. In here, it's our movie recommendation chatbot. Alright, first time if we send a message like this, let's assume our chatbot in case giving a response like this. We can either check this with directly asking only the user question, but for now let's assume it will give an answer like this. First we ask a question, hi, I'm looking for a movie to watch. Then our chatbot will respond like, hello, I'd like to help, something like that. Okay, in here we have to give the role, we have to assign the role as assistant. Okay, that's the role of our chatbot. Then we can pass the content as, hello, I'd happy to help you find a movie. What type of movies do you enjoy? Do you prefer a particular genre or theme? Let me format this so it's going to ease our eyes. Well, this is how the basic message structure looks like. We have three main roles: system, user, and assistant. So system is the system prompt or the instructions that we will set for the model. Okay, for our chatbot. After we set the instructions well defined, then our users can easily interact with this chatbot within the context of this system prompt. For the second role, we will assign the user, and that will be our user. Okay, this will be our user question, query, anything like that. Okay, and the third one is the assistant. So this role is the assistant or our chatbot, right? Remember, as the summary, in here we have two main entities. First one is our chatbot and the second one is the user. Okay, so for our chatbot, we will assign this system and the assistant roles. So system role will be the system guideline or the system prompt. So our chatbot will work within that context. And for the assistant role, that's how the model or our chatbot respond to the user's message or the query. I hope you got it, right? To maintain this conversation, all we have to do is just repeat the exact pattern from the user's end to assistant end, just like this GitHub Copilot suggests me. So we can maintain this conversation like user assistant, so on. Now let's continue this chat from our users and let's try to answer the question previously asked by this assistant. So let's give the answer like, I am in the mood for a sci-fi thriller. And we will try to run this and check how the answer looks like. Let's go to the end of the line and print this response. Then I'm going to open the terminal and we will enter this python app.py command. And this is the response and its output looks like chat completion. So how about we printing a JSON type response instead of this chat completion object? To do that, we can execute the model dump JSON function. Let's try to run this command again. And as we can see, the output is now looks like a JSON. Exactly a JSON. Okay, let me zoom out the terminal a bit so we can see the both outputs. In here, top, that's the PO response object, and the below one is the JSON version of it. Alright, this is a huge response and we can't exactly show everything inside our project. It's not a practical way, right? So what we expect is the message from the model, I mean our chatbot. So to get the response message from here, this output, all we have to do is talk to this content. Let me highlight the exact output that we received from our query. Before that, let me clean the terminal and we will run this again so that will be easy to view. Okay, so this is the content response our chatbot. Okay, how we can now access this? It looks like this inside the choices array, and here we have the messages and also the content. This is basic programming, and I'm not going to tell you exactly how we can access a place like this. This line of code prints out the content of the message from the first choice in the response. It's accessing the choices list, grabbing the first item, and then getting the message dot content from that item to display it. Now let's run again the Python command. Now this is the output, and we can work with it. This is good. This is what we expect. But we are facing an issue here. Guess what? I think you are right. We can't exactly give a user this code base and ask them to put their message inside here. Okay, we can't exactly define all the user messages. To fix that, we can do a small thing here. Yep, we can get an user input and pass it to the messages array. But before that, we will commit these changes into the Git so we can easily identify what changes we made and start tracking the code changes. I'm open the terminal again. Let's clear the past history and add this to the Git by using git add dot, and we will see what's the status. So nothing commits yet. So let's start our first commit message as feed init the project. Feed means the feature, and I'm going to use init as the initialization. Let's initialize this project with the first commit, but you can prefer whatever you want. Alright, after we have added the first commit message, let's clear this terminal and go back to the Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to create a new variable to store the user input. So this will be user underscore input. We will get an user input like this and include a prefix like u, so we can identify what's the user input and what will be the assistance response. After that, I'm going to include this variable here. Delete all other unnecessary parts. Everything is now clean and simple. We only have the system message and the user message. And for the output, we will add another small prefix, that's the assistant. Now let's try to run this again by using Python app.py. Alright, now it's you. We will ask, hi, I'm looking a movie. Oh, actually looking for a movie, but so let's wait for the response. And here it is. Assistant gives an answer like this. Hi there, I'd love to help you find a movie. What genre are you interested in? Or do you have any specific themes or preferences in mind? So this is much more similar to the previous assistant content that we tried earlier. This is a one-way direction communication. That means once we started the chat and ask a question from the model, it gives the response, but it doesn't hold the context, I mean the conversation history, its end. To avoid these type of issues or mistakes, we have few approaches, and one of them are we can try out a loop, conversational loop. I mean we can loop the conversation and append everything inside a history, then we can manage the context and continue the long conversation. Before we jump into that part, let's add another git commit so we won't miss anything previously we wrote. Just like before, we will add this to the git by using git add all command, and we will check the status. Next, we will add the git commit as feed add user input. Alright, good to go. Now let's go back to the Visual Studio Code and start changing the code. So at the top of this user input variable, I'm going to declare another one, and this will help us to maintain or save the conversation history. Let's name it as conversation underscore history, and this will be a list, or we can say a dictionary as well. I'm going to move everything from the messages to this conversation history. Let's start with the system. So I'm going to copy and paste it. Then we will will add a while loop. Okay, in this while loop, our conversation is going to continue. While this is true, our conversation is going to loop. We will move the response and the user input inside the while. Then let's append this conversation history with the user input. So this has everything we want to get started. Since we are managing a conversation history dictionary, we can just simply assign that to the messages. Alright, then we can continue the printing part. So let's print that. Then at the end, we have to make sure to include the response inside the chat conversational history as well. I mean, we need to append that response message inside the conversational dictionary. So it has everything what we want. Well, I see a code duplication. As you can see, this response choices messages content is duplicated twice, and we don't have to do this. Let's assign this to a variable, then we can just simply call to this variable, then work with it. So I think everything fine up to now. How about we try to run this inside the terminal? Hey, in here, we don't have to depend on this regular terminal. We can use the inbuilt Visual Studio Code terminal as well. But it depends on your choices. But this video, I'm using the regular terminal because I can easily show you the changes in full screen. Alright, let's try to run this application using the python app.py command. And now from the user end, we will ask something like, hi, I'm looking for a movie. So the model responds like, of course, I'd like to happy, right? Then let's continue this by telling I like sci-fi movies. So model takes some time and give a response like great choice, and these are the movies that you might enjoy. Okay, so let's continue this chat by asking another thing. How about movies related to AI? Let's see the response. Okay, these are some of the movies. Huh, that's amazing. Yep, indeed. I watch all of these movies, and I highly recommend you to watch these things as well if you are into AI. How we can exit from this chat? I think we haven't implemented that part yet. To do this, currently we need to enter the Control plus C command in the keyboard, so that will exit from this Python run. And that's not a very good practice. How about we go to the Visual Studio Code again and make some changes. Right, let's add a small conditional statement. It goes like if user input lower is equal to this exit, then we will print exit in the chat, goodbye, and we will break this loop. Okay, this is going to work. Let's go back to the terminal and clear the history and start working with the Python command. Yep, let's try hi, I'm the leaper, and hi, I like sci-fi movies again. So do you need any sounding, right? Okay, I need to exit from it. Let's try to include exit bird and enter. Okay, cool, it's working. This is a very much basic program, a command line application we can create. How about we add a small modification, because I don't like to have my terminal all in white text. Let's try to add some colors, so it will be very easy for us to read. Now I'm going to install the Python Colorama package. Oh, I forgot to add the git commit message. Let me add it. Let's select the message as feed add loop conversation. Now let's go to the Visual Studio Code and start working with the changes. First, I'm going to import for an init from Colorama. Then I'm going to call the initialization function, that means init, and include the auto reset to true. Okay, let's add 3 print lines to make this beautiful. First one is with the yellow color. Let's print like welcome to the movie recommendation chatbot. In the second line, we will tell that you can start chatting with the chatbot. Type exit to end the chat. Alright. And for the third line, this is optional. We can try to add some dashes. Now for the user input, let's add the color as blue. When exit the program, let's add the color as yellow. For the assistant, I'm thinking about the red color. Alright, let's try to run this in terminal and see the output. I'm gonna start this chat with introducing myself. Hi, I'm Daleepa. I like funny family movies. Okay, awesome. This is great. Do you remember my name? Yep, it is. So our chatbot can now stay in the context and also can remember my name. That's a good thing. I think it's enough. Let's try to exit from this program. Alright, I hope you got some idea what's going on here. Actually, we can do so many customizations like this, and I think this is enough for this video. That's it. We have just set up our first Azure OpenAI chat completion and received a response from one of the most advanced AI models available. There's a lot more we can do with Azure OpenAI chat completion, like handling different types of prompts, working with large datasets, and even creating more complex chatbots. So this video is focused on getting started with Azure OpenAI chat completion API. So now that we have a small idea how this is work, we can focus other features in upcoming videos. You can find all the links and the code in the description below. In the next video, let's discuss a cool feature to work with this chat completion. Then we will expand our knowledge. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep your intelligence sharp.